Hey everyone, and welcome. When you think about water damage, your mind probably jumps to some huge catastrophic flood, right? But what if I told you the real crisis, the one that happens all the time, often starts with a simple, silent leak you don't even see? Okay, let's dive into this because what happens next is something every single property owner needs to understand. So, picture this. You find the leak, you manage to shut the water off, and you let out this huge sigh of relief. The problem's over. Phew. But is it? Not even close. The real question we need to be asking is right here. What happens after the leak stops? Because the second that water is where it shouldn't be, a clock starts ticking. Loudly. That puddle on the floor, that's just the opening act. The real enemy is the unseen, progressive damage that's just getting started. And believe me, it does not wait around. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the sudden, silent threat, where this all starts. Then, we'll talk about the crazy race against time that kicks off immediately. After that, we're decoding the damage, like the pros do. We'll walk through the 3 phases of restoration, and finally, cover what happens after the flood. Ready? Let's get into it. All right, first up, the sudden, silent threat. And I want you to forget about those Hollywood-style disasters for a minute. The truth is, most water damage crises begin with the ordinary, everyday things you have in your house right now. Now, take a look at this list. It's kind of wild how normal all this stuff is, right? In fact, get this. Appliance failures and plumbing problems are responsible for more than half of all indoor water damage claims. We're talking about a pipe that bursts during a cold snap, a toilet that just won't quit running, or a washing machine hose that finally gives out. It can even be something as sneaky as corroded plumbing creating a slow leak that causes a massive amount of damage before you even notice it. And, of course, depending on where you live, you've always got to factor in major storms and flooding. And these culprits, they always leave clues behind. You might spot a faint little water stain on the ceiling and think nothing of it. Or maybe you notice your baseboards look a little puffy or swollen. That weird musty smell you can't quite track down? Yeah, that could be soggy insulation inside your walls. Or worse, the very beginnings of mold. These are literally distress signals your home is sending you. Okay, so you see those signs. What now? Well, this is where we enter a flat-out race against time. Because once water is loose in your house, it's not just about getting things dry. It's about winning a battle against a very, very unforgiving timeline. And this quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? The damage isn't just about your stuff, about property. It escalates, and it escalates quickly, into a genuine health hazard. That sense of urgency is why a super fast response is completely non-negotiable. Let's really break this timeline down, because every single moment counts. We're talking mere minutes before water soaks deep into everything, your carpets, the drywall, the subfloors. Within a few hours, that drywall starts to physically change. It swells up, it gets mushy, it breaks down. But the real absolute turning point happens between 24 and 48 hours. This is the magic window where the humidity gets high enough for mold spores, which, by the way, are always in the air, to wake up and start growing. At the same time, metal stuff starts to rust and corrode. And if this is left for days or weeks, you're looking at potential structural damage and some really serious biohazard risks. So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this number, 24 to 48 hours. That is the critical window. This is the time frame where a simple, manageable water issue can explode into a much more complex, hazardous, and expensive mold contamination problem. Time is everything. Absolutely everything. So how do the pros handle this race against the clock? Well, that brings us to our next section, decoding the damage. Because they don't just show up and see a puddle. No way. They see categories, they follow standards, and they have distinct processes that guide their entire response from start to finish. First things first, they classify the water itself. Category 1 is clean water, say from a broken water supply line. It's not great, obviously, but it's not immediately hazardous. Then you have Category 2, gray water. This is water that's got some contaminants in it, like from an overflowing washing machine. But Category 3, that's black water. This stuff is seriously contaminated, coming from sources like sewage backups or storm flooding, and it poses a major health risk. And the category of water determines the entire playbook for cleanup. Next up, pros make this really important distinction between 2 words that sound similar but are totally different: mitigation and restoration. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Mitigation is the ER. It's the emergency response, stop the bleeding, get the water out, stabilize the patient. Restoration, That's the reconstructive surgery. That's the rebuilding and repairing process to get the property looking like the damage never even happened. So how do they know they're doing all this the right way? They follow this, the IICRC S500 standard. This is, for all intents and purposes, the official rulebook for the entire industry. It's a set of proven, scientific protocols that make sure the job is done safely, correctly, and most importantly, completely. Okay, so this brings us from the problem to the solution. Let's look at the actual path to recovery, which thankfully follows a very clear, structured process, the 3 phases of restoration. Look, no matter how bad the situation seems, the professional response boils down to these 3 core steps. Step 1 is the emergency removal of all that standing water, using these incredibly powerful pumps and industrial vacuums. Step 2 is the most critical part, structural drying and dehumidification. This is where they bring in specialized gear like air movers and giant dehumidifiers to pull trapped moisture from deep inside walls and floors. And finally, step 3 is restoration and verification. That's where materials get repaired or replaced, and they use special moisture meters to prove the structure is back to a normal, safe, dry standard. Now check out the timeline here, because this is where a lot of people get surprised. That initial water removal, super fast, maybe just a couple of hours. But the drying process, the part that really matters, takes 3 to 5 days. This isn't just about wiping a floor dry. It is a scientific process of literally pulling hidden moisture out of building materials. Rushing this step is the single biggest mistake anyone can make. After that, the final restoration can take a week, sometimes more. So why is that multi-day drying phase so non-negotiable? Why so critical? Well, that brings us to our final section, after the flood. Let's talk about the long-term risks you face and what a true recovery actually looks like. If a property isn't dried out completely, and scientifically, you are basically left with a ticking time bomb inside your walls. Just look at these hidden dangers. You've got mold growing where you can't see it, wood rot that actually compromises the structure of your home, corrosion on pipes and wiring, and those musty smells that just will not go away. This is exactly why that professional verification step is so important. And here is another huge takeaway for you. Documentation. The pros use moisture maps, they take tons of photos, they write detailed reports. This isn't just for them, it's for you and your insurance company. This level of detail is what prevents arguments and helps make sure your claim gets processed smoothly and fairly. It's your proof. So we'll end with a question for you to really think about. For most of us, our home is the biggest investment we'll ever make. After seeing just how fast a tiny leak can spiral into a massive crisis, the real question is that investment of yours truly protected from this silent threat? Something to consider. Thanks so much for joining me for this breakdown.